In March 1918, USS Cyclops left Barbados with over 300 people aboard. The Navy says she was never heard from again. No wreck has been confirmed. The cause remains unknown. Modern retellings usually place Cyclops inside the Bermuda Triangle, but the strongest clue may not be the place where the ship disappeared. It may be the ship itself. Cyclops was built to carry coal, not dense ore. And years later, two of her sister ships also vanished while carrying ore. That pattern does not solve the case. It does, however, turn a supernatural story into a physical question. What happens when cargo, structure, machinery, and weather all push the same ship toward failure? Cyclops was a Navy collier, a support ship built to carry fuel for other vessels. She entered service in 1910 and was commissioned after the United States joined the First World War. On February 16, 1918, Cyclops departed Rio de Janeiro. The Navy history records a stop at Barbados on March 3 and 4. After that, the public route ends. The phrase "never heard from again" is precise, but limited. It tells us that no later communication appears in the official history. It does not tell us whether the ship failed suddenly, whether a message was attempted but never received, or where the final event occurred. The National Museum of the U.S. Navy says ships searched for Cyclops because wartime observers initially suspected a German submarine. The wreck was not found. The cause remained unknown. The official casualty register lists 306 killed and identifies Barbados on March 4 as the last sighting. Other histories often give a slightly different total, which is why the most defensible summary is also the simplest. More than 300 people disappeared with the ship. The useful clue begins with Cyclops's job. Coal is bulky. Ore is far denser. A ship designed around one cargo can experience very different loads when its holds are filled with another. The Naval History and Heritage Command notes that Cyclops was designed to carry coal rather than ore. It also reports that the ship's power plant was in poor condition. Neither fact proves a sinking. A worn engine does not automatically destroy a hull. Dense cargo does not automatically make a ship disappear. But failures at sea often come from combinations rather than one dramatic cause. Ore also changes how weight acts inside a ship. A dense load can concentrate stress differently from a hold filled with coal. If structure, cargo distribution, machinery, and heavy seas all reduce the same safety margin, a vessel may have little time to recover from the first serious failure. In an NHC historical analysis, Director Samuel Cox describes a plausible chain. Structural weakness, dense ore, and heavy seas could have acted together. He also cites a theory that years of coal cargo may have weakened longitudinal supports, leaving them more vulnerable under stress. That is an assessment, not a recovered accident report. There is no wreck to inspect, no final logbook, and no confirmed break point. But it identifies a mechanism that can be compared with other ships. And that comparison is where the case changes. Cyclops belonged to a four-ship family. One sister, Proteus, served for years before being sold. In 1941, she disappeared with a crew of 58 while carrying bauxite ore. Another sister, Nereus, also vanished that year with bauxite aboard. Neither wreck provided a public answer. Two later disappearances do not prove that Cyclops failed in the same way. The ships operated in different years, under different ownership, and in conditions that cannot now be reconstructed perfectly. But the pattern matters because it points toward shared variables: vessel design, aging structure, and dense cargo. Those variables can exist whether or not anyone draws a triangle on a map. The fourth sister gives the comparison a control. USS Jupiter was converted into the Navy's first aircraft carrier, USS Langley. Langley was eventually lost in 1942 to a documented Japanese air attack. The ship class was not protected by mystery, and it was not uniformly consumed by an unknown force. One loss has a known cause, three do not. That difference is exactly why the sister ships are evidence, not an answer. Cyclops vanished during wartime, so enemy action was an immediate possibility. Her captain, George Worley, had been born in Germany under another name. Crew complaints and reports of a deeply unhealthy command climate added fuel to sabotage and mutiny stories. But suspicion is not proof. NHC says the Office of Naval Intelligence investigated Worley and found no evidence that he was disloyal to the United States. It also reports no evidence that the crew had seriously planned a mutiny. The captain's background may explain why a theory spread. It does not establish what happened to the ship. The same is true of the wartime submarine theory. Searchers had reason to consider it. The selected public record does not turn it into a confirmed attack. The Bermuda Triangle gives the disappearance a memorable label. It does not provide a demonstrated mechanism. NOAA says there are no officially recognized boundaries for the Bermuda Triangle, and the U.S. Board on Geographic Names does not maintain an official file for it. NOAA also says there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur there more often than in other large, heavily traveled parts of the ocean. The Navy and Coast Guard reject supernatural explanations for disasters at sea. Weather, navigation, machinery, structure, cargo, and human decisions are less cinematic, but they create causes that can be tested against records and wreckage. In the Cyclops case, the missing wreck limits that test. The triangle cannot fill the gap. It only gives the gap a name. The evidence supports 3 levels of certainty. First, the route and disappearance are documented. Cyclops left Rio, stopped at Barbados, and was never heard from again. More than 300 people were lost. Second, there is a plausible physical pattern. Cyclops carried dense ore in a ship designed for coal. Her machinery was reportedly in poor condition. 2 sister ships later vanished with ore cargoes of their own. Third, the decisive facts remain unknown. There is no confirmed wreck, no recovered final record, and no proven sequence that explains exactly how Cyclops was lost. Even one famous superlative fails under scrutiny. Cyclops is often called the largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history, but NHC explicitly says that claim is incorrect. The case is large enough without making it larger than the record allows. USS Cyclops did not leave an answer, but it left a better question than the Bermuda Triangle legend usually asks. Do not begin with the shape on the map. Begin with the ship, the cargo, and the pattern that followed. For another case where the Bermuda Triangle legend grew faster than the evidence, watch Flight 19 next. The disappearance is real. The familiar navigation story is not as simple as it sounds.